So mostly my DNF, again, at around 54% or something like that, was due to the fact that I could not handle another "she doesn't even like men" quote. Hey, welcome to my video. If you're from my Instagram, I love you, and if you're not from my Instagram, love you all the same. Welcome to Monthly Book Club. It's a series here on my channel where I tell you exactly what I read each month and exactly what I rate it. Now, before we begin, as always, a few disclaimers. Number one, I'm never here to bash books or authors. I am here, however, to honestly rate everything that I've purchased and read, but I never want to do that in a mean way, and that's also partly because I feel like reading is so subjective. The reason why I maybe hate a book might be the exact reason that you love it, and vice versa, and obviously both of the opinions are valid. So ultimately, even if I DNF a book, if you like it, I love it, and that's all that matters. I really never want to discourage you from reading anything because oftentimes after I finish a book, I also go on Goodreads to see what everybody else thought, and I find that there are a lot of opinions that are completely different from mine, which clearly tells you that we all like different things. So if you want to read a book, read it even if I rate it low. And as a last little disclaimer, I'm just gonna pop some pictures on the screen right now for you that kind of tell you why I rate things the way I rate them. Obviously, this is all subject to change and my mood, vibes, whatever, but this is sort of my baseline. And now with all of that out of the way, let's begin. So even though these are my November reads, I already started with the Christmas books, so we're gonna be reviewing 2 today, and we're gonna start with the Christmas Exchange. So as always, tropes first. So this is a contemporary romance, a reverse harem, and a holiday novella. So Reagan goes back home for Christmas and she's reunited with her 2 ex-best friends. Now their families all decide to celebrate Christmas together, but the friends decide that before that they want to take like a spontaneous little ski trip just to reconnect, you know? However, when they get there, feelings are obviously stirred up, and also there's a snowstorm that keeps them there a little bit longer. Now at this point, I'm sure you can connect the dots as to what happens, but that's all I'll say. Now let's get into the review. Unfortunately, this for me was a 2-star read, and as far as spicy, 2 chili peppers. So one of the main reasons for that for me personally is just because even though the 3 main characters were like best friends in the past, we really didn't get to read about that much, and so I didn't get that feeling and that vibe. And so primarily, I guess I just wish that we got more backstory of their friendship before they immediately basically jumped into a relationship with each other. Because I feel like what happened was they barely caught up and they immediately jumped into something together, and so it wasn't as exciting. There was no build-up really. And I will admit here that yes, I do love a good slow burn, but I don't feel like this even needed to be a slow burn. I would have just liked a little something, like even a few flashback scenes from their friendship back in the day would have sufficed in my opinion, because overall to me it just felt a little rushed. And I also feel like when it came to the spicy scenes, yes, they were spicy enough, but considering the dynamics, I feel like they could have been amped up a little bit more. But that is just my personal preference, and also this is a good place to add that I've read a few novellas in the past maybe 2 years, and what I'm gathering is that I may not be a novella person per se. Like it all just rushes by too fast for my liking. So when you're thinking about this review, also make sure to take that little bias into consideration. I'm not saying I've never read good novellas, but I overall feel like I might not be the novella type. I just don't think I'm its target audience per se. Okay, moving on. So we can move on to the second Christmassy book that I read, and that one is How My Neighbors Stole Christmas. So the tropes are contemporary romance, holiday romance, and also small town enemies to lovers. And I use the term enemies loosely here, but I think you get the point. And the story is about, well, Story Taylor, that's her actual name, and her neighbor Cole. Now Story comes into town to take care of her aunt because she had an injury. One thing about this town though is that it's a Christmas Wonderland 365, but on Christmas they actually do have this competition going, and whoever wins gets the title to become Christmas Kringle. Now this in their town is a big deal, and since Story's auntie can't compete this year, she trains Story to do so. And up until this point, their grumpy neighbor Cole has never participated in this competition, but all of a sudden he feels this rage. He doesn't feel like it's right for an out-of-towner to compete and win, and so he enrolls as well. Obviously because of that they have some differences, but ultimately they end up falling for each other, and that's kind of the story. Now let me tell you my thoughts. So again, for me, another 2-star and 2 chili pepper read. And I feel like up until maybe 40% of the book, it was actually really interesting. I liked the plot and it was giving very cozy Christmassy vibes, but I didn't feel much of a spark or any type of romance between the main characters. It was just giving too slow and not enough burn for me personally. And then their first kiss happens at like 45% or something like that. From then on, it was all good up until the third act breakup, which in my opinion happened really, really late. It happened at like 95% or something crazy like that. And also, the reason for the breakup, it was so stupid. And I know what you're thinking, okay? All romance books do this. Very rarely is a third act breakup actually something that makes sense. It's usually just a little silly misunderstanding that's honestly really stupid and could be solved with a 5-second conversation. And this, in my opinion, was exactly that. It was just very juvenile. And another thing that was juvenile to me was the fact that the main characters just were in this secret relationship at one point and they didn't want to tell the female main character's sister about it at all. And then when she found out, it was so dramatic for what I don't know. So I didn't personally vibe with that. I'm now also, spoiler alert, gonna spoil a big part of the story because I need to talk about it for a second. So if you don't want to hear that, that's completely fine. Skip to this part. But lo and behold, we find out that the auntie was faking her injury the entire time just because she wanted the sisters to get closer together. I didn't like that at all. Ooh, I didn't like that. I really couldn't vibe with it. Overall, I felt like a lot of adults in this book were just acting way too juvenile for their age. And I also felt like there was more emphasis on the Christmas competition versus the couple. I honestly would have liked to read more about them than the whole competition aspect of the book, because I honestly got the point after like the first 2 challenges. And so I would have just personally preferred if there was more of an emphasis on the main couple. Otherwise, like the way that the town was described was very cozy and it was giving off holiday vibes, so I like that. But again, a lot of people disagree with me. This book is overall very highly rated, so definitely read it. It is something that you might like. Now let's take a little break from holiday romances. I will definitely be reviewing more of them next month, but for now we can move on to Sleep Princess. This, as I'm sure you guessed, is a hockey romance, which I just love that they never let me down. They're just always fun for me. And when I'm in a reading rut, a hockey romance is my go-to. And I wouldn't have, this is a side note by the way, which has nothing to do with anything, but just when I started reading romance novels, I wouldn't have expected that. Like, I really wasn't a big hockey girl. But well, I guess I am now, so let's talk about it. It is also a contemporary romance and it's about Luke and Natalie. They meet in a resort in Mexico. They're both there for separate weddings and they share one fantastic night under the stars together. They didn't think they'd stay in touch, but Luke invited her to watch one of his games in Vegas and she went. Afterwards, they went to an amazing after party together, but the next morning they discovered that that after party was actually a group wedding ceremony and they got accidentally married. Which, again, another side note, honestly, I didn't see coming because I didn't read the blurb beforehand. So I loved reading about it. I thought it was just very fun. Anyway, back to the story. Natalie at this point is scared that because that was such an irrational decision, if her father ever found out about it, he'd cut her off of the family business. So she decides to call an audible and tells her dad that this was intentional and they did it intentionally. So now all she has to do is to get Luke to agree to pretend to be in love with her. Sounds easy enough, but let me tell you, it certainly was not. Now let's get into the review. This for me is definitely 4 stars and 2 chili peppers. So overall, I thought the chemistry between the main characters was just great. It did have that sort of element of insta love, although I wouldn't necessarily call it insta love because it's not like they saw each other and like fell in love instantly. It's more of they saw each other and fell in lust instantly, which to me personally sounds way more realistic. So that's something that I can understand. But then they started liking each other at a more realistic pace and they fell in love later down the line. So overall, I thought the pace at which things happened was great. Now, I love the little twist here, which is the accidental marriage, which isn't a spoiler because again, it is in the blurb. I just didn't happen to read it, so it was a surprise to me. But there was another added little layer here, and that was that the main male character thought that that accidental marriage was completely a setup by Natalie. And I just feel like that added overall more depth and it added a fun little layer to the story. The chapters were short and snappy and I loved that. And overall, overall, it was just such a fun read, and that's what made it a page turner to me. Okay, now we're moving on to the last full review. The last book I want to talk about fully here today is Her Soul to Take. So it's definitely a dark adult romance with elements of fantasy in it, and it's about Leon and Ray. So essentially, Leon is a demon and Ray is this student and demon hunting YouTuber. Okay, maybe not demon hunting, but she definitely does a dabble in ghosts, and her intention was never really to summon a demon, but her YouTube channel wasn't generating enough views, and so she thought, how do I spice this up? And she sort of, well, did a ritualistic ceremony, I guess, in front of her camera and summoned Leon.
What the fuck is going on in here on this day?
Who has decided he doesn't just want her body, but he also wants her soul. And now she's thinking that getting involved in this world for real might have been a huge mistake, but obviously it is too late. Overall, 4-star read and 3 chili peppers. We don't often have a 3 chili pepper rating here on this channel, and honestly that's on me, mostly because I feel like it takes a lot for me to rate anything higher than 2. But in regards to spice, I'm gonna read you a little note off of my phone here. While I was reading it, I actually wrote the spice. What happened to hello?
How are you? My name is.
Because it really was just that spicy, okay? There definitely also was a degradation kink in there, which was, in my opinion, done really well. Overall, I really did like the book. I feel like it would have been such a good Halloween read because it really was giving spooky ooky vibes, and I wish I would have read it in October. But alas, I didn't, and I'm still glad I did now anyway. I really didn't feel bored at all. I also did enjoy Leon a lot. He's such a badass, and he's so dangerous. So you know I was eating this up. Okay, now we're done with that. We can move on to rapid fire reviews. Starting off with So Not Meant to Be. This one was 3 stars and 2 chili peppers. It was good. I guess I was a little disappointed because I just expected more because I've read better things from this author in the past. But again, honestly, that's just my subjective opinion, which plenty of people don't agree with. So there you go. Next up is Untamed Vixen. This 1 star and God knows how many chili peppers because I did not finish this one. I DNF'd it at around 50%. There's definitely an insta-love between the main characters, and again, if it's instant attraction, that's something that I can get behind, but like they really do not know each other at all, and pretty soon the 3 main male characters in this book start referring to the main female character as if she's like their world, and meanwhile 2 of them only had a quick one-night stand with her. However, the 3rd one does know her for years, but up until 50% of the book, I didn't get the backstory on those 2, so there was really nothing to convince me to finish this one. I'm so sorry. Moving on to Reckless Hands, another 1-star read and God knows how many chili peppers because I DNF'd this one as well. Immediately, I got the ick because there were multiple, if not biphobic, definitely bi-shaming little comments from the main male character. It's like he really didn't understand bisexuality at all, and in the year of 2024 I just do not think that's necessary. I don't think it contributes to any part of the story. I also think it's absurd. So mostly my DNF, again at around 54% or something like that, was due to the fact that I could not handle another "she doesn't even like men" quote. Really not the vibe. Moving on to The Orc and the Innkeeper. This is 3 stars and 2 chili peppers. Overall, it was definitely very fun and whimsy. I do wish that the plot had a little bit more substance to it, but overall, I did enjoy it. Hold Me Before You Go. This is a new release by Brittany Ann, and I have talked about her on this channel multiple times. And I think I might make a dedicated video. I feel like I always say that, but this was a 5-star and 2 chili pepper read. I read this in a span of 12 hours and I just gobbled it up. This reminded me of why I love reading, and it definitely made me feel all the feelings, and that's honestly part of why I read, so I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Okay, and that's it for today's video. If you made it this far, let's see, you are an adorable little gingerbread man. Don't ask because I literally cannot elaborate, but thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider liking, subscribing, maybe even commenting, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.